You didn't like the silhouette of me?
Oh, no, it was just fine. We all try our best to look good for this show.
Yeah, I look good with this lack of resolution. I don't like flaws.
Yeah.
Yeah, David, you look like you're in a dream sequence of some 80s sitcom.
I know it. When we were still on DOS with a computer, they had a video, it would be all grainy.
You look like you're in the space station, actually.
I think we got.
So at 6 o'clock, we'll give a just a couple more minutes for folks to log in, get to the city calendar. I like having the calendar, Gabe, as the sort of the focal point for documents in the WebEx. That's a good feature. All right, I don't hear any more folks joining the meeting, so thank you very much for coming to our June 9th City Council meeting. I now call the meeting to order, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you for that. So we did not have a closed session this evening, so we will get into the agenda. I believe there are two amendments to the agenda. DHD has asked to have the item number 3 from the consent agenda removed. So we'll remove that one. And then from the discussion items, there was a cross communication where supporting information for item number 2 was not included in the packet. Again, just a simple miscommunication or cross communication. So we'll remove that one and move it to our next meeting. But any other items from the agenda that folks wish to, from the council that folks wish to discuss?
I'll move that we accept the agenda with number 3 and number 2 removed.
And Dwight will second the motion.
Oh,
All those in favor?
well.
Aye.
All right, so our agenda passes, or the agenda is approved.
We want to send that to the, I forgot, should we send it out to the public?
Oh, you are correct. Thank you very much. Do we have any, and just a reminder for folks, when you do start the meeting, you start in a muted state. And so don't forget to unmute yourself when you wish to speak. We have a relatively small group tonight. So hopefully we can figure out who to raise their hand. And so please, if there's any public comment on the agenda, please. Looks like Jessica Baker has raised her hand. And you're on mute, Jessica. So please, if you wish to comment. Thank you.
Yes, I don't have access to the agenda notes. Is there any way we can have those forwarded, or are they online somewhere?
The City of Trinidad website, if you go to the calendar, it has the agenda packet right there on today's date.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You bet. Trinidad.ca.gov. Any other comments regarding the agenda from the general public? All right. So we have a motion and a second and a vote Having no further comments, we'll assume that that is still a pass. Moving on to the minutes. We have minutes from May 12th to consider. Any substantive changes from the minutes of May 12th?
I have, Tom Davies has some.
Raise your hand. Say
Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, so I would like the minutes to reflect of May 12th on the, let's see, what page is it here? It's on the first page of the minutes, actually the second page of the minutes for that, under the Trails Committee agenda item. I recall that, and I listened to the recording again, that we did give some direction for the signs to be put on the trails regarding COVID-19 safety protocol and to reopen the trails. And the minutes reflect that there was just a need to evaluate a policy, which I believe was referencing a trails closure policy and prioritizing if applicable, but doesn't reflect that we did have a consensus that the trails were going to be reopened with safety signage.
Got it.
Any other comments?
Norman Thompson.
Norman Thompson.
Go ahead.
Yes, on page 7, I spoke at the last meeting, and there are 2 small corrections on page 7. First up, my name is Norman, not Norm. That's an ego one. And the second one is that the blurb states the fire hydrant is located on the corner of Van Wyck and Galindo, but it's actually not on that corner. It's directly in front of the second house on Van Wyck Street at 840 Van Wyck.
For me, that was, Norm, that was very broken up. Do other people have the same experience?
I got it.
I heard him.
Okay.
Thanks for that correction.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Other comments from the public? All right, so we have some amendments. Thank you for those comments. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda from, sorry, the minutes from May 12th?
I'll make a motion. We approve the minutes from May 12th.
As amended. As amended, David.
As amended. That's the
Okay.
first.
Second, Tom Davies.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye. Can I make a comment, a general comment about the at this time?
Sure.
When we amend the minutes, I would request that they please be brought back so we can see that the amendment is accurate and vote again on the amended minutes, because it's we never really get to see them again, and it feels to me like signing a contract where you don't really know what you're signing. Does that make
I
sense?
think we can do that. We can include that in the, how about in the consent agenda, Tom? Would that be acceptable?
Oh yeah, that would be fine. I just would like to see the amended minutes brought back for review.
Okay, we'll put them in the consent agenda for future meetings.
Thank you.
And then we have the minutes from the May 21st meeting, council meeting. Any comments from the council on the minutes from May 21?
No.
All right, seeing none or hearing none, any comments from the general public on the meeting minutes from May 21?
Already had.
Okay.
All right, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve minutes from May 21?
Miller moves to approve the minutes of May 21st.
Grover seconds.
First and second, Miller, Grover, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much for that. Moving on to council reports and committee assignments. I'm going to start with Mr. West.
All right, I've got we got HCOG started meeting again, so that's nice. They attempted, we heard about a tax that they wanted to put on transportation. It was a quarter cent, and it was voted on. And after some discussion, it was decided it was not a good idea because so many cities trying to put on their own tax. I'm not sure if that will come up again or not, but HCOG decided it wasn't a good idea, and they want to push it to 2022. It was a road tax, was going to be a lot of repairs of local roads, which would have been a good idea, but they felt it was too much. Unfortunately, HCOG is actually receiving still quite a bit of money, so they're still get money for transportation, so they will be doing quite a bit of. They didn't lose too much, and we'll see some of that in our in the ACA and Humboldt Transit Authority. We'll see a lot of money. They're going to change the way they do business a little bit, trying to get feeder connections to various cities and areas that may help us out later, not yet. And then the other things were just last chance grade and Highway 101 project. Highway 101 project. They'll have designs for in 2021, but at this point they need 6 seasons to finish mitigation. They're trying to shorten that, so it'll be a long time before things are done there. And last chance grade, a lot of work will be done in 2021, so they're beginning to get a lot of things done. They're going to have an open meeting in July with Hoffman, and then a second one later in the fall. So they will be getting meetings. Hopefully we'll have those dates to you. That's it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Groovy.
Yes, we haven't had an emergency response meeting in a while, but I'm going to reach out to them because those were quarterly anyways. But I was able to have another meeting with Jared Hoffman, our congressman, and talk about some backfill revenues and things of that nature. They're still working on the allocation of funds and things like that, but there is about $1 trillion on the table. Plus, I brought up an idea to him to have local stakeholders and merchants get together and see what kind of protocols they put in place above CDC and WHO recommendations. See if we can come up with some innovation, especially with myself and the other city officials, and kind of pull that data and see what we're coming up with, so that when this happens again, obviously the COVID's really up in the air right now this week, especially. So that was kind of what we talked about. It's a pretty short meeting, but we're going to continue to do that every couple of weeks, my understanding. And that's all I have to report out.
Thanks a lot, David, for meeting up with our congressman. I think that's a great way to keep our little voice heard. So thanks for doing that.
Oh, yeah, no.
Mr. Miller.
Yes, our CEA had a meeting on the 28th of May, and there was discussion of upcoming rates, which are generally going to be in the same ballpark as rates that we've had, but there was some uncertainty because RCEA's program always is trying to just go a cent or two underneath what PGD schedules, and they haven't released their rates yet. So we're waiting to see what they say so we can say what our ratepayer is going to be using, but it's about the same probably. Then there's a concept called the feed-in tariff program that RCEA has, which is to encourage medium-sized power generation that's local in Humboldt County. RCEA pays higher than market rates for people who are local because we're trying to get our local resiliency so that we can be less dependent on that transmission line from the Central Valley. By that, I mean that we buy electricity at about 40 cents a megawatt or $40 a megawatt hour from big solar stations in Southern California, but we're paying $55 to local people, just paying more so that there is local, we're trying to build our local availability. So, and this feed-in tariff program encourages people who have larger than residential, but maybe a couple city lots filled with solar panels somewhere. And we approved 2 projects, each of which were a megawatt. Just to give you a feeling of what this looks like, an average house solar system would be about 5 or 6 kilowatts. And so a megawatt is 1,000 of those, 1,000 kilowatts. So, or it would be, 20, 30 times as big as the average house. But they're much, much smaller than big major projects we buy from in the Central Valley and so on. So we approved 2 of those and up the amount of money in our budget for 6 megawatts worth of future projects because we're trying to encourage more. That was the major thing. There was a couple of small additional items, but it was a very short meeting.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Davies, anything to report today?
The Trails Committee finished working on the trails policy and forwarded it to the Planning Commission for their next meeting for comment and possible revision.
All right. And I have nothing to report. HTA and REDEC, the 2 organizations that I am a member of, I was not able to attend those meetings this last month, unfortunately. I had internet issues at home, and so I was unable to, for a couple days, get in, and it happened to be the time when those meetings were. So hopefully I can get caught up next month. So that is the council reports, staff reports at this time. Mr. Naffa.
Yes, so my city manager's report is included in the packet. Generally speaking, referred to lodging, COVID-19 testing at Redwood Acres. Lodging is being considered for leisure travel statewide, but the county has yet to declare. In the meantime, only essential workers, local residents, and travelers on a journey who need to rest for one night. We received $162,000 of SB2 planning grant funding for our housing element. Sprint, who's merging with T-Mobile, is ready to decommission their cell tower at Trinidad Head, and but a coastal development permit will be needed for that. And then all the trails are now open with the signage that was requested by the Trails Committee, except for the Van Wyck Trail, since our insurance carrier said that due to slope damage and safety issues, they suggested it remain closed. And I did get an update from the other cell carriers. Verizon simply said that the building permit is still in review from the county, and that's for their West Haven site. And then the Quarry Road site is of course operational for Verizon, but AT&T is working on adding to the Quarry Road site, and they said that they were able to get some work done and planning to start construction at the end of June and be on air in October from that particular site. Also, our deputy sheriff will be here for the 4th of July. So he'll be here from from the afternoon until the early morning hours to make sure that he's available when fireworks may be going off. And that's it for the updates.
Thank you very much. One thing I wanted to mention, that Dwight had sent out an email to the city. Thank you for doing that, by the way, Dwight, to try to reach as many people as possible. And just to encourage folks, if you live on the route, that the 8th graders are going to parade through tomorrow between 4 and 5 p.m. Being an educator forever, it's really hard to think about the graduations not being the way we're used to. And so any way that we can give those 8th graders a little support for their accomplishments, I encourage us all to do so. So come out from 4 to 5. The route basically goes from the school down Maine towards the coast, and then over towards Ocean Avenue East and View. So it's a nice little loop through town. So try to give them a little support. It's a big accomplishment. I don't know how big the 8th grade class is this year, but so it won't be a massive parade, but we definitely want to give them some support. So thanks for that staff report. Moving on.
I have a question for the staff.
Yes, sir.
Tom Davies. I noticed that the Parker Creek Trail still has a red closed sign as of this morning. It doesn't have the same sign that the Axel Lindgren Trail has. As far as safety signage, it says closed due to COVID concerns. The sign that's out by the street view.
Okay, I thought that was changed on Monday, so I will check. I'll talk with Public Works because they printed the signs on Monday to put up. And so I'll make sure that other red sign comes down.
All right, thank you. And one more question. I'm wondering where we are in the process of filing for the coastal development permit for the Van Wyck Trail closure after the fact permit from the Coastal Commission.
I'll have to check with Trevor. We had given her that as one of the things on her plate.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, thanks for reminding me, Tom. Any other comments or questions for Eli on the staff report? Okay. So moving on then to items from the floor. I just read this just to keep it consistent. At this time, members of the public may comment on items not appearing on the agenda. Individual comments will be limited to 3 minutes or less. Comments should be directed to the council as a whole and not to individual council members or staff. Council and staff responses will be minimal for non-agenda items. And I have put out my cell number. I know there are a number of folks who have called into the meeting, and so 707-845-5942. If you're not able to use WebEx, to raise your hand in the chat or chat with us, or simply wave your arms back and forth on the screen. So at this time, do we have any items from the floor? Mr. Klompus.
There you go. I'm muted. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that. I read in the notes that Becky Price Hall is the project and grant coordinator. And on her report was about the Van Wyck Bicycle Pedestrian Connectivity Project that has been placed on hold because of some pushback and decisions made in the community. But my comment is really about the fire hydrant on Van Wyck. It has shown, because of a change in piping to it, when the trail failed, that it may not have sufficient pressure. And it's concerning me as a safety issue that was pointed out in October of last year in the GHT report. So I realize that it may be a budget issue to tie it into the Van Wyck pedestrian connectivity, but if that doesn't happen, I'm really interested in understanding what the plan would be from the city council of how do you rectify it. I've been told that there was a fire hydrant on Edwards and the hoses are long enough, but that's really not an answer. That's more of a workaround. So I just don't want the city council to be negligent or have it become an insurance issue, that if there were a fire and things got out of control, that all of a sudden now the city is responsible for the losses in addition to the residents that could suffer losses. So I would just like to bring that to the attention of the city council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klompus. I can say that the engineer has proposed rerouting of the water, basically tying into, during the stormwater project, tying into an existing construction project to move that pipe around to sort of bypass that slump there on Van Wyck. So we are moving in that direction, but thank you for that input. It looks like Norman and Anita, you had your hands up as well.
Anita Thompson. I just want to echo what Richard stated, just that we do need an effective fire hydrant with adequate water pressure, and that it's really a safety issue. And I just spoke to one of the council members before the meeting that he realized that we relocated to Trinidad because of the campfire. So we know how quickly a fire can spread. So that's definitely an issue for us, that the water pressure isn't high enough to put out a fire and to save lives if something like that happened here. And then we were at the last meeting, Norman, my husband, did bring this issue up, and it wasn't on the agenda item. It wasn't appropriate to bring it up. So we were instructed to contact the city manager, and he was wonderful, got back to me. He did state that the pressure will be tested at this fire hydrant. So I understand that's in the plan that happens soon, hopefully. And I understand that the Public Works is understaffed right now. So when that test is done, I would like to receive the results. But I would also like to stress that if that I just feel, and I feel like my husband feels the same way, and Richard feels the same way, that this is something that's an urgent matter, and it's a safety issue that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Norm.
Norman Thompson, thank you for letting me speak to this issue. I want to add my voice to the concern regarding the proper upkeep of safety resources in our community, like the fire hydrant that serves the neighborhood on and around Van Wyck Street. It seems to me that it should be a standing policy that such maintenance be a high priority in the community. If we wait until we actually need this broken resource to see its value, we run the risk of being too late. We keep the fire truck in top condition, even if it just sits at the station, because we understand that the potential danger to our community if it's not kept in top working order. We should take the same attitude with this fire hydrant, in my opinion, even though its only job is to stand by in case of emergency. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as we plan about priorities. And we're hoping that we can see some sort of a plan that tells us when these steps are going to be taken to remedy it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was broken up for me. I don't know why I'm having issues, but as long as everyone else heard that, we're good. Just the tail end of it was broken up. Any other comments, items from the floor from the public? Looks like Ms. Baker.
There you go.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jessica Baker. This is my husband, Chip Baker.
We talked to Trevor Parker last week, and it appears that our cannabis permit was a topic of conversation at the city planning department and maybe with the city council. We're not sure. We have a small cannabis permit we've applied for under 10,000 square feet on Old Wagon Road on Bowder Lane. There's been a lot of misinformation about the water usage on it. Man, I understand these reports are really hard to read, but we wanted to call and talk about the misinformation a little bit and just kind of set the record straight. And what is the name of the form, Jess?
In the SUIR.
In the SUIR that we had to file, it mentions this 42,000 gallon a day extraction number, and that's just a baseline number. Our operation is only extracting 200 gallons a day for domestic use. That's for our house and our personal use. And then our cannabis operation is coming off a permitted well, and it's also estimated to only use 300 gallons of water a day. We've done significant amount of work with biological surveys, with sediment. We've worked with the Fish and Game for 1.5 years. And, we've really we've gone the extra step. Anyone who's ever come to the property has really recognized that. We have a 1 million gallon water storage pond. We've got 60,000 watts in solar power to power this small greenhouse operation. And we just felt like this was our opportunity to reach out and talk to you specifically about it.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if it did come up at the last meeting, but we felt like we wanted to be able to reach out to the community and let anyone know if they want to speak to us directly about what's actually going on. We're more than
Right.
welcome to speak with anyone, and we want to work hand in hand with everyone on this issue.
Yeah, we've gone out of our way. Anytime the county or Fish and Wildlife has asked us to do anything, we have. And, you know, we're stewards of the land. We're environmentalists. We definitely want everybody to know that we're not stealing water. We've applied for all of the proper permits.
And Fish and Wildlife took 18 months to decide how much water they felt was appropriate for us in our operation.
So if you guys have any questions or want to get in touch with us, you always
Absolutely.
can. chip@chipbaker.com, 707-496-0228. Jessica's number is 707-499-8587. We're going to continue to contact the community here. Our final meeting was postponed because of questions that the community had here. So we're trying to resolve this as fast as we can. If you guys have any questions for us right now, feel free to ask.
Thanks
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for introducing yourselves and for sharing what you got going on up there. If you didn't see it, the big thumbs up from Dwight on the solar component. That's great. And so thank you for that. And we will definitely be in touch. And you went back on mute, Tim, just so you know. There you go.
Oh.
And you know, we'll keep monitoring what's going on. You know, with the COVID. Honestly, the Zoom makes it a little easier to get to the city council meetings.
And his name is Chip, CHIP.
Oh, sorry, Chip. My bad.
Yeah.
Chip@chipbaker.com.
Thank you very much. Other items from the floor at this time?
Hello?
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Is this Katrine Holman?
This is Katrine Homan, and I would like to express my disappointment in the council's decision last meeting to reject the MOU between the city and the Rancheria. You all know best how your partnership with the Rancheria has benefited the city and the community. I can only speak of the things that I have seen, like the fundraisers for sports leagues and schools that I have attended at the casino, or when I drop off and pick up my kids at school, the guards from the Rancheria are there. They're already there to keep the crosswalks safe for all the students and the parents. On very early weekend mornings, members of the Rancheria, I've seen them picking up trash along the freeway at the West Haven and Trinidad off-ramps. Or I can tell you about the time when I picked up tablecloths at the casino free of charge for a nonprofit event. The staff member who prepared the order had added additional tablecloths because he thought that this different size may fit our needs better than the ones we had requested. And just bring them back dirty. We'll take care of it all. The last time I checked also in Trinidad, which was today, the Trinidad's Memorial Lighthouse, it was still safe and cared for on the Rancheria harbor property. The shame lies in the irrefutable repetitiveness of one question: what can the Rancheria do for the community? Seldom is it asked, what can the community do for its Rancheria? And a very surprising part of the MOU discussions was that it seems to community members, it's more important that no one talks to the Rancheria about water than it is to successfully complete the city's stormwater project. Thank you. Thank you for hearing my thoughts on this.
Thank you for sharing them. Other items from the floor? And I'm checking, I don't see any raised hands or any text. So thank you very much for contributing to items from the floor. At this point, we have our consent agenda. All matters on the consent agenda are considered routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is requested by any council member, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. A single opportunity for public comment on the consent agenda is available to the public. We've already approved the agenda overall, but any further discussion on consent agenda items from the council first? No? Okay, any comments from the general public on the consent agenda? Just in case you don't have it right in front of you, we have the staff activity report, the law enforcement report, authorize public works to evaluate bids and select contractor to apply striping to Scenic Drive, a resolution adopting a list of projects funded by SB1, Road Repair and Accountability Act, amending the Humboldt Transit Authority Joint Powers Agreement. Any comment from the general public? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion for the consent agenda? Mr. Miller.
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended by original agenda decision.
I'll second that. Jack.
And Dave. All right, Mr. Grover has a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Consent agenda passes. Moving on to our discussion action agenda items. The first is the ASBS Stormwater Project Update. Eli, I see Steve Allen on the phone, but are you introducing this topic, Eli?
Yeah, what I was going to do is Steve Allen is on the video and is also on the phone. So I just want to make sure that Gabe will unmute phone number 599-6986 so Steve can talk.
Hey, got
Looks
that?
like he's unmuted.
And I also, I believe, I want to make sure that Steve, I'm going to share a screen so that his presentation can be seen by everyone.
Very good.
Okay, let me bear with me for a second. Let me see if I can do this without really screwing things up here.
Starts on page 52.
It's kind of a large file, so I may have to bear with me for a second. I may have to try the whole file itself, but I may actually have to cancel out of this and then just bring the presentation in separately.
We will wait patiently.
All right. Can anybody see the document that's on the screen, by the way?
I see the first page of the agenda of the packet.
It's showing me that it's the packet, but I'm only seeing the agenda, so bear with me for just a second. I'm gonna close that. I'm gonna try a different route here. Stand by. Sorry, Steve.
That's okay. I'm looking for it too to see if I can share any quicker, but I don't think I can.
No, this is on me. I had a feeling, Mr.
Dwight here.
Here we go.
Gabe,
Yep.
we've got all the slides in our packet. Can you just roll?
The packet was just too big for, I think, this platform to consume. It's a pretty large packet, so I'm going to go ahead and just go straight to the document.
Okay.
I think I have that up now. Let's see, share file. Here we go. Here we go. Sort of. Looks like. Now, are we seeing this sideways?
Yep.
sir.
Yes.
My goodness. Don't know why.
Oh, what about the left sidebar?
There we go.
Oh, we got it. Was it that left sidebar there?
Nice job.
Well, we'll see. Don't get too excited yet. I thought this. I don't want to. It looks like I might have to rotate.
Every one of them.
Yeah. Hold on just a second. I'm sorry.
There you go. That's good.
A lot easier earlier. We'll get there. Let's see. I'm going to start here, and we'll get Steve going. I think. I'm going to go back up. There's quite a few pages, but we can kind of work through this one page at a time. So let's see if this works. I'll let Steve tell me when to advance. Steve, are you there? Steve, are you there?
Yeah, this is Steve. Can you hear me?
There you go.
Yeah.
Great. Well, good evening, everyone. This is Steve Allen from GHD. So I'm going to provide a brief update on the Stormwater project. This isn't the first update, but it's the first one in a while. So Gabe, if you could go to the next slide. This will be a fairly brief presentation, but we'll cover the project summary about how the project started and what we're trying to do. We'll talk about a review of the completed work to date, and then talk about review of the upcoming final project phase, and then leave time at the end for questions if there are any. Next slide, please. So regarding the project summary, this project started from the city getting a letter from the State Water Board. And I believe this was in the neighborhood of 2004, 2005, regarding the Trinidad Head being an area of special biological significance, or an ASBS area. And there's actually 34 designated ASBS areas along California's coast. The letter was basically prohibiting polluted discharge, not any discharge, but polluted discharge, mainly stormwater discharge, but other point discharges as well. But the thresholds for pollutants was so low that essentially that something needed to be done. So they were not saying that the city was discharging any polluted discharges or that the kelp beds were any problem. They're just saying it is a special biological resource that should be protected. So the city started pursuing grant funding in order to complete some initial studies to try to identify what the key issues were and to develop an action plan. And then once that was completed, the city started pursuing grant funding to help implement the actual action plan, portions of which have been completed, and the final phases are now funded. And the overall concept is to utilize very simple technologies, gravity-based systems, and to try to minimize maintenance requirements. And when the project is completed, it would result in no ocean discharge, essentially physically eliminating the city's compliance requirements for the discharge exception. Go to the next slide, please. So there's been a lot of work done. The management plan that we discussed happened in 2008, and that outlined the action items to be done. Took a little while to get the next set of grants, which then started with geotechnical investigations, groundwater investigations, groundwater model being completed to really understand what was happening before any infiltration designs or areas were identified. And then additional grants were obtained and designs completed, and construction of phase one actually completed in 2014. And that construction was for projects along Trinity Street and Ocean Avenue. And those were also for some of the larger infiltration areas. The second construction phase was what we call phase 1B. That was completed in 2018, and that was for a rain garden on Hector Street, and then also some infiltration areas on East Street. If you go to the next slide, please. This is a graphic of the final phase of the project, and you're not expected to be able to read these on the screen, but it's just for graphically to kind of show you where these different areas are in town. So there are many different areas. We're trying to disperse the infiltration areas and trying to minimize the amount of water that we're actually taking down to the bottom of the hill. And I'll talk about each of these in a little bit more detail on the next slide, please. So what was shown in the map was that there are improvements located on Edward Street, on Ewing Street, Underwood Drive, Van Wyck Street, and the lower parking lot down by the State Beach. They all use the same low impact development technologies, which the gravity-based systems we talked about. So there's a series of catch basins and drainage inlets, drainage pipes that take the water to a treatment structure, which remove trash, oil, and water, other pollutants. And then there is a manifold pipe, which is what's shown in the picture. And that is put essentially in a large infiltration trench with gravel. So it's very similar to a leach field. That water is held during a big storm and then slowly infiltrates down when the storm passes. And if you go to the next slide, please. So there's several considerations, particularly construction considerations for the next projects. We want to talk about some of those. One is public access. Public access is to city streets, State Beach, the dock, boat launch area, restaurant, etc. Public access will be maintained during construction. There's ongoing coordination with the Rancheria. Part of that is just use of the parking lot. City owns part of the parking lot. Rancheria owns part of the parking lot. There's a State Beach there. There's a lot of overflow during heavy fishing season. There's a lot that happens down in that particular area. So we're coordinating with the Rancheria as far as how to schedule that and minimize impacts and to keep public access open. There's also one-way traffic control or detours that would be on some of the upper streets. That would be in effect. So even when we're working on some of these smaller streets, we would still maintain one lane of traffic and or have a detour available. And then importantly, during construction, even in the work down in the parking lot, that there will be parking in the lower parking lot available. Not the entire area, obviously, but there will be a reduced amount of parking area available during construction. Another consideration is the public schools, specifically the elementary school. So the goal would be to try to have the work completed earlier in the summer before school starts. That would be ideal. If that doesn't happen or for whatever reason there are delays, then we're also putting in place basically not allowing construction traffic in front of the school after school starts. So that would likely mean that there would be access detour for construction only. The road would still be open, but we wouldn't want construction traffic going through. So construction traffic would be routed over to likely Ocean or View Street or another option. In the project schedule, there was possibility, and I think the citizens have heard before that there was a possibility of the project happening this summer. That appears to be unlikely, and the city has actually requested a time extension. There's several things going on, work with the Rancheria, other projects. There's a lot of complexities with COVID, et cetera. So it looks very likely that construction would be targeted for next summer, not this summer. And that would likely be June through October of 2021. And there is another stormwater project the Rancheria is also working on in the same area. That construction may also happen around 2021. So again, we're still coordinating how to phase those two projects to minimize impacts to the public, and also how to help those two projects get completed with minimal interface or issues with the two contractors, should be two contractors on site. I believe we go to the next slide, I think is for questions. Yes. So I tried to keep it a brief overview. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Steve. Any questions from the council or the public on this presentation?
Tom Davies, I have a question. Can you hear me, Steve?
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Will there be swales incorporated into this project similar to the other phases?
Good question, and the answer is no. So the treatment in these phases are from the treatment chambers through mechanical treatment instead of infiltration through swales, similar to what we've done in past phases of the project.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Allen, I have a question for you, and that is regarding the connection with the Marine Lab. I believe that the Marine Lab's discharge from their saltwater system goes through some of these existing pipes down to the bay. Is that still an issue, or has that been resolved?
That is a good question. We have been still working with Humboldt State. They do have a stormwater discharge and they have a saltwater discharge. They have expressed interest, and the city has discussed with them about trying to combine those projects, which would be, I think, ideal for the community. And so we are still actively working with them to separate their seawater from their stormwater for a couple reasons. One, there's different regulatory structures in place dealing with those two items. And the main important one on the technical side is it's not very conducive to combine salt water with fresh water, especially if you're trying to infiltrate your water. Anyone who fishes or surfs or gets out around saltwater nuts, you know, it gets kind of sticky and kind of gums up things and also corrodes things. So we're trying to work with them, and the project is designed that if they can separate their seawater from their stormwater discharge, that they could connect into the city's stormwater system as designed. So we basically designed the system based on including the flows from their property, so that if they can separate their seawater, that they can hook into the city's new stormwater infiltration project. Hopefully that made sense.
Yes, thank you very much. I know that's a bit of a challenge, so I appreciate the update. Any other questions or comments from council or general public?
I had a question, Anita Thompson.
Go
I
ahead.
was wondering if the work was done next summer and the piping and fire hydrant work wasn't completed on Van Wyck, could we tie in that work at that time? Meaning, while you're working on Van Wyck, you repair the piping and restore adequate water pressure to our fire hydrant right there on Van Wyck during this project time.
Yeah, that's a good question as well. So the city's been trying to figure out multiple options to help repair the line on Van Wyck, the line that's currently closed to the trail project. And so there's two grant projects. This is the stormwater project, and then there's the Van Wyck Trail project. The utility repairs of the water line, as well as stormwater and other utilities, are part of the Van Wyck Trail project. That also has some delays and are still working through some details on that. So it's unclear the timing or how that's going to pan out exactly. So another option that the city has been looking at is to try to incorporate some of that work into the stormwater project. That started years back when we were actually applying for the grant and trying to allow some of the water lines in the area of excavation or work to be updated at that time. That wasn't allowed by the grant, by the state, because this is a stormwater project, and so they did not want to allow any funds to be put forth for the water system. However, to more directly answer your question, there is still an option for the city, should the water line not get repaired to the Van Wyck Trail project, or if that timing is just delayed and this project is moving forward, then the city is considering the option of at least taking advantage of the fact that there's a contractor on site and could potentially exercise a change order, even though it would not be funded through the state grant, that the city could still take advantage of the contractor being on site and get some of that work completed.
Thank you. Hopefully it can be repaired before this year. Our hope is that it will be repaired this year, but thank you though. I appreciate your input. Thank you for your work too.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions or comments?
Yes.
Yes, hello, Steve?
Yeah, go ahead. Is that Ms. Blouse?
Hi, yes. Steve Allen mentioned in his summary that coordination would happen with the Rancheria. With no more G2G scheduled, what are your methods that you have planned for this coordination?
That's a good question, and I think I would defer that to the city.
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say it's a good question. I was going to defer that to you or the city manager, so go ahead.
Yeah, we are currently working on a schedule to get back in discussion with the government to government regarding the stormwater project with the Rancheria.
Do you know when you might have that finalized?
I expect that we'll get our schedules together at our next executive meeting on Monday, whatever the next Monday is. The 15th.
Okay, thank you.
And then there was another question that came up, but I had Mr. Klompus.
Yeah, just a question for Steve Allen. I know there's been some indication that the Rancheria wasn't in a position to cooperate on the project. And what I'm trying to understand is, can this project to protect the ASBS areas be done in different compartments so that the city of Trinidad and the area that they control be completed separate from the Rancheria's area that they control? Or is it you do everything or you do nothing at all?
Good question. I can give you my response, and then the council or city manager can chime in as well. The city has been working with the Rancheria for years, as it was pointed out earlier, on various projects, and certainly including the stormwater project. So there is a mutual interest between the Rancheria and the city to resolve the stormwater issue, which obviously impacts everyone. There are separate projects. So there's projects that Humboldt State University is pursuing as part of their Tolonica Marine Lab. There's projects that the Rancheria have been working on, some completed, some not. And likewise, the city of Trinidad, some have been completed and some not. So there's been a lot of coordination happening that's still ongoing. The projects, there's portions of the projects that can be completed either way. There's other portions of the projects that where more collaboration is mutually beneficial. So I'm hoping that collaboration is going to continue and these would get resolved, but it is not a all or nothing, that everything would just completely stop and that the stormwater would not be resolved. It's just more of a question of timing and how that would be resolved from my perspective.
And I would reiterate that we have a great opportunity to do the stormwater project in a way that is mutually beneficial to, well, multiple benefits, the community, the Rancheria, the city, the environment, and that's really what we're headed towards. We have great technical information to really support what can and can't be done. So I think all the pieces are in place. We just need to try to realign them. Other questions for Mr. Allen or regarding the update of the ASBS stormwater?
Steve, this is Jackie Hostler, CEO. Can you hear me from Trinidad Rancheria?
Loud and clear.
I can, yes.
Okay. I'm a little confused about the ongoing coordination piece because at the last city council meeting, it was my understanding that your fellow council members indicated they did not support future consultation in the normal fashion with just the city consultation team, and that they were asking for public meetings from now on to have the discussions held in public. So I think it's really important for the city to clarify its position. The Rancheria has received no communication since that last meeting. And to hear that there's ongoing coordination is a little bit surprising after what I heard on the last conference call. So I'd appreciate a clarification there.
Yeah, like I said, we are working, Jack and Eli and I, considering all the comment from the last council meeting about government to government meetings and our realization of the importance for these government to government meetings and to increase our reporting out techniques and methods and whatnot. But we definitely intend to resume this government to government work. With our schedule, we have not been able to, and I apologize personally for not making sure that our communication went out earlier. But we definitely intend to resume that as soon as possible, probably next Monday.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Other questions about the stormwater project? Thank you very much, Mr. Allen, for the presentation. It's good to see it again and again and again. It's a pretty complex project, so thank you very much for that. We will now move on to what is on the agenda as item number 3.
Can we have council comment after questions?
Sure.
So I think I heard that you're scheduling a government to government meeting for next Monday. Is that what I just heard?
Nope. The executive team, Jack and Eli and I, meet every Monday to discuss city business in general and agenda items in particular.
Okay. I would ask that if you're going to schedule a government to government meeting, based on a lot of the comment that we heard at the last meeting, that you at least publish some sort of an agenda of what you believe is confidential and what is not confidential in these conversations. So
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We're loud and clear that the community is very interested in what's being discussed. And we will make it also clear with the Rancheria, our interest in bringing information back out to the community and to respect their wishes in what is confidential. And if they move into confidential topics that they don't want us to report out, then we will recuse ourselves.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, moving on to number 3, discussion decision regarding resolution 2020-08, supporting planning for electricity, microgrid, more reliable water supply, and alternatives to broadband internet service. This item was brought forth by Councilman Miller. So Mr. Miller, I ask that you introduce this topic.
Okay, I might just note the several whereases of this resolution. Briefly spoken, the first page in the packet is essentially the resolution itself, and the several whereases basically refer to the increased number of electrical outages, the fact that we have droughts and late summer dry months with little reserve capacity, the fact that we have just one cable provider and occasionally unreliable cell service, that I'm seeking support from fellow councilors for the city to basically support planning for additional energy possibilities, especially a microgrid for the Trinidad City and Greater Trinidad area, so that in case of an outage, we can basically, if we have enough resources, we could isolate ourselves and not be dependent on the intertie that comes in from the Central Valley, and thus have to start running gas generators if that's what we have, and a lot of people without power. So sometime in my vision, in the next 5 to 7 years, we would have a separate microgrid for Greater Trinidad, the area between Little River and probably as far as Big Lagoon. But we need to engage in conversations with other local agencies, and those would be like the lumber company, Greater Green Diamond with the county, and with RCEA, and with the Shots Energy Lab, which has RCA and Shots Energy Lab both have considerable experience in this, because they have in the last several years both completed and near construction on 2 major microgrids, among the best in California. And it seems to me that we could be the third of this area with planning. And so we're just looking for support from the county for planning in this direction. And I had a conversation with Trevor today, and she said this is not specifically a planning document. The word planning in this context is more working with other agencies to find out what is possible, setting up an outline of possibilities, probably outlining where engineering is needed, what expense would be, and specifically in the resolution that we have today, pursuing potential grant funding. And toward that, and that's actually the final paragraph of the resolution on the first page, that I attended a online seminar for about an hour with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they have grant funding for small communities like ours to establish additional resilience for electricity and water. And that would be a major source of potential grant funding, as well as the California Energy Commission, which is very, very supportive of microgrid projects. So with those possible sources of funding being looked at in the next year or so, I'm actually calling for the fellow councilors to say, let's start exploring this. And that is the essence of the first page. The next couple of pages of supporting documentation have some links to microgrid projects. It has a discussion about how the number of recommendations over the past several years that County Supervisor Madrone has made to try and work with Green Diamond and the uphill properties to establish water storage facilities that could then have pipes running down from high-level storage to low-level storage. And at the nighttime, water would flow down the pipe and run through micro generators to supply nighttime generator when we don't have solar power available. And if we have several solar power projects we can develop in the area, they can power the water from the lower reservoirs back uphill in a concept called pump hydro storage. So we would have basically battery storage by way of water to provide us backup power during outages and during night times as we need for this microgrid project. And finally, it made sense to me, because everybody is very much dependent on the internet, that we could consider and have discussions with various agencies that are involved in the development of municipal broadband networks, where communities are essentially responsible for their own services. And these are fiber optic services. Chattanooga, for a large city, has gigabit service that is at half the price that people pay with commercial providers. But there are many, many small municipal projects for cities as small as ours, where you have municipal broadband that provides affordable service to everybody in town. And I think we ought to start looking at it. So there are 3 components to this request. And there is nothing specific in terms of we are voting on a particular project. We're just saying, let's start talking about it with various agencies and report back on this.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Mr. Miller. Any comments or questions from the council? Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I helped Dwight. We've been working on this weekend, and it's a lot of it, maybe to summarize even a little more concisely. It's for the council to bless us to see the reasonability and feasibility of certain projects that we haven't really, that are just, it's a new technology basically. So we just want to be able to do it and know that the council knows what we're doing. And obviously no decisions would be made until we report back to the council on our data findings.
So what I'm hearing is that you and Mr. Miller are really going to start doing some of the heavy legwork on this effort?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. And if I could ask one question, it has been brought to my attention that the substation that feeds Trinidad is set up in such a way that if we had a generator, we could plug the generator in to the substation during power outages and supply power. Is that, I know that you're looking for more alternative forms of energy and whatnot, but is that within scope of what you're imagining in terms of resiliency to power loss?
Yeah, different phases to it. A lot of it is basically having energy independence as much as we can, but being tied into a network, and hence the internet kind of molds into that too, because everything's like, even the solar system I just put on the house, it has to talk to a computer. Everything does. So that's kind of where the tie-in happens.
Okay.
Okay, and Dwight's response to Steve. Absolutely. Over the short term, fossil fuel generators would help us to provide near-term resilience as part of a design. But I'm imagining that one of our major goals is to get off of fossil fuels just as quickly as possible, and to develop solar and water generated electricity, possibly even windmills up on the top ridges of Green Diamond near us. That these are all under consideration to get as much electrical power as we possibly can. And I might say that from a planning point of view, also, I did a little research, and about 10 years ago, there was an excellent planning document that was given to the city council, 45 pages of a major report saying a possible plan for Trinidad for energy independence and climate action. And it was a well-done report. It turned out it was a coalition of HSU students, but I thought it was a paid-for document, because it was submitted to the city shortly before I started my 2010 council service, and I hadn't seen it until I looked at it today, and it details the kinds of things that we're actually talking about today, and that was 10 years ago. So I might call it, everyone can look at that and find that document. If you go on the city webpage and go to the planning department, you'll find the 2010 Trinidad Climate Action Plan proposed, or draft. Now that, I talked to Trevor, and she said that kind of thing is being considered as part of our general plan update, but that specific component has not been addressed yet. The other aspect that has been addressed is the county plan for energy resilience and independence. And in the county document, there are very clear indications that this kind of thing is what the county wants to support. And I noted in talking with Trevor today, she said that for the most part, right now, rather than having a specific component in our general plan, that she and Eli have been working with the county on their plan. And the county's plan specifically addresses in several of their points the kind of thing that we are proposing to investigate.
Thank you very much. Other comments or questions from Mr. Davies or Mr. West? Mr. Davies.
Tom Davies says, I have a question. So when you're talking about the microgrid, I just want to clarify, is it for when there's power outages, or some sort of independent energy system just for this area to switch over to?
No, Tom, it would be grid tied with PG&E, and
Okay.
PG&E would, it basically, the best models for it are the operational model that's running at the Blue Lake Rancheria, a very successful microgrid that is grid tied until the grid goes out, and then they can go independent. And what is planned to start construction in the next couple of months. In fact, they plan to be done by December. I don't know if they're going to make it with the COVID thing, but the airport microgrid is the same thing, a very large solar system that can be independent, but basically is in a position to sell power back to PG&E and make money for RCEA and you and me, who are customers, but it'll lower our costs if PG&E buys electricity from that microgrid. It is conceivable that if we had enough installed solar and other resources, such as pumped hydro resources in the hills, that we, by some public-private partnership with the local agencies, we would be one of the agencies, and this is just a mental thought that I had, is that the Trinidad Water Department would be an agency and Green Diamond would be an agency, and we'd have a public-private partnership that exists throughout the country, specifically to service water, power, broadband, and where there is excess power, sell it back. And conceivably, if we had enough of it, we would actually be making money for our water department, water electric department.
Thank you.
Mr. West, any comments or questions?
Just want to compliment it. It looks like a really nice job of putting this together. Hope people will join those of us who have already got our solar panels in place and see if we can get all of our local people to join this and be part of it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the general public at this time? I'm not seeing any hand raising. I'm not seeing any waving of arms. All right, let's bring it back to the council then. Do we have a motion for resolution 2020-08? Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
Yeah. Could I actually read the last paragraph, which is the resolution itself?
Oh, yes.
Therefore be it resolved that the Trinidad City Council supports a recommendation by the Energy and Resilience Committee for city staff to engage in planning of discussions with local landowners and governing agencies toward a greater Trinidad electricity microgrid, more reliable water supply, alternatives to Trinidad's broadband internet service, and other activities that will promote greater resilience and lower greenhouse emissions. These discussions should include potential grant funding from the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the California Energy Commission and others.
Very good. And just to be clear then, we would, because this is a standing committee, we look forward to sort of periodic updates on what's happening.
Yeah, a minor comment toward that. It is an ad hoc committee.
Right, it's not subject to the Brown Act. It's not a three-person. But I guess I say that because I'm just looking forward to hearing updates on what you're able to come up with.
Yes.
I'll second the motion.
Right, so, I'm sorry. Any comments?
Can I just comment one?
Yes,
I think this is a really great, this is Tom Davies, a really nice idea, great idea, lots of good information. And I think it's absolutely moving in the right direction for our area. My only concern is directing city staff to engage in discussions. We always are hearing that city staff is got very limited time, not enough time for, preparing for meetings and things like that. I'm very concerned that this would start to string everybody out.
Can I comment on that at this moment before the?
Yeah.
Tom, I have a very strong personal commitment to assist city staff, to be an arm of city staff on this.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we have a very, very nice resolution before us. Do we have a motion to approve this resolution?
This was a motion to approve.
And I'll second that motion.
And we have a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Very nice. Passes unanimously. Again, thank you for your, what do they say? Thanks in advance for all the work in trying to find any and all resources that will help the city towards resilience in energy, water, and communications, internet. So thank you for that. We are moving on then to item number 4, the continued discussion decision regarding the 2020 sales tax election and calendar update. Mr. Naffa or Mr. Adams, I believe one of you has the floor on this one.
Yeah, I can, I think I've got a couple of options here. I can bring up on the screen the presentation that we've seen numerous times, but there's also the staff report, which we put together for the packet that basically explains, I think, what I understood our assignment to be at the last meeting, which was to come back with some options. So in the staff report, I just listed some options. And that was it. It was pretty clean cut. So do we want to look at any of the figures from the presentation, which were some budget projections, which was basically how the sales tax factors into the city's budget as a whole? Or do we want to, bring up on the screen for members in the public some of those options? Does anyone have a preference?
I personally feel like we've had some very, very good coverage of this topic in the past. And the packet reminds us of that. I think at this point, really a point where we have a very good understanding of the role that this tax plays in the city. And our goal is to determine what sort of tax, if any, to put on the ballot. I'm hearing that we need to put this on the ballot. So really it comes down to, do we continue a 0.75 tax on the ballot, and for how long? Or do we consider expending somewhere in the vicinity of $16,000 of city resources to put a different tax on the ballot? And so I believe that's our discussion for this evening. Other council members have a different recollection of where we are at this point? Mr. Miller?
I wouldn't say different, but I think if we just focus, I don't know what page number it is, but it's the very first page of discussion action here, and near the bottom there's 6 alternatives, and I think basically we're heading toward looking at which of those 6 we're going to be deciding on. I just mentioned that.
Right, the A, B, C, D, E, F, 0.75 for 4 years, up to 1% indefinitely.
Yeah,
and everything in between.
Option G would be letting it fall away and not having any money from it.
Which technically is an option, although I haven't heard anyone. I haven't heard anyone weigh in that direction. But
all right, the no tax alternative.
So that. Okay. The highlighted at the May 12th meeting, the council asked for a list of options, includes but not as limited to, and then those are the 6 options that are down there. So, Mr. Groovy, sorry,
yes, yes, I've went over this a couple times. I think we have discussed it quite a bit, and I think, for me personally, C is my recommendation. I think it keeps the options open. It doesn't, it's been going, and it can be voted down too. I like that. If the constituency doesn't agree, it can get voted down. So.
Okay.
This is Eli. I'd like to weigh in with a little bit of information. So I did talk to Kent, who's the executive director of the Taxpayers League. And the Taxpayers League is looking to support what they call responsible taxes. They felt that our existing 3/4 cent is responsible. They would possibly support that, but not support a 1%. In addition to that, they asked about the term, and I told them that it's currently 4 years. And he mentioned that, in other words, up to 8 years that they could support, but I think they might not support if we went 10 years, or definitely not if we went indefinitely. And I think it's a good thing if we do get support from the Taxpayer League, because we as a city cannot really actively campaign for the sales tax.
Let's hear from Mr. West here.
I think that for one thing, I gather anything we do is going to cost extra money, which doesn't seem like a good plan. Is that right, Gabe? That if we were to do an indefinite, would that also cost money?
That's not my understanding. If the same rate stays with the city, then there is no re-implementation of the tax.
Thank you.
That would be the most. That would be the path of least resistance.
I think the one thing is that I think going up would be a big mistake. I don't think I think that would be much more difficult to pass. And I also think changing it from a 4-year plan would be a difficult one to pass. So I think the idea of getting it, keeping it the way it is something that the community would be more likely to, would appeal to the community much more so than 10 years. I would definitely think so. And also, this means that if we say it's rescinded by a majority vote, that means every year that can come up as another issue for the city. I think going 4 years is nice and clear. It makes exact sense to the community. It makes sense to us. And that way, I think it'd be easier to pass. And that's one of the most important things for us to do. That's it.
Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I made note Eli's comment about the Taxpayer League. They have historically been very strong against taxes, and the gentleman who represents that league, I've noted, and Jack has probably noted, he's appeared at most HCOG meetings as a concerned taxpayer, as a very vocal, articulate person who is watching the purse very carefully and prepared to actively work against us. Now, that said, there is considerable, we ought to listen very carefully, in which he said that he would support an 8-year, which is not currently on this. But I think we had to look at that carefully because it's a major effort on all of our part with it. We're a small town with not that much energy and staff. Getting up for the sales tax every 4 years is a major effort. And if the Taxpayer League would be prepared to support an 8-year tax, I think that we could convince our citizens that the 8 would be okay. I say that because one of the major arguments that we've made in the past, and in the last couple of times that this has been approved, is that a lot of the tax is paid by tourists. In effect, it enables the town to defray the additional cost that tourists put on the town itself. You know, we admittedly, those who actually stay here in B&Bs, they pay a lot, but a number of other people just passing through on the weekends, they're quite a tax, if you wish, a drain on our resources. And if we have something that is primarily paid by tourists and it extends out 8 years, I think it would be saleable.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open it up to the general public at this point. Do we have any comments from the general public regarding the 6 options that have been put forth in the council packet regarding the sales tax? Mr. Columbus.
Yeah,
there you go.
Thank you. Do we have any way to compare the tax structure in Trinidad versus other small resort California towns? I mean, are we the outlier? Are we in the median range? Are we high? Are we low? How do we compare with other cities and towns? That would be important to understand. Thank you.
I don't know who would have that. I don't know if Gabe, if you've run across any of that in your tenure with the city.
I can't say that I've done a survey anytime recently to see which other, similar type cities out there have their own tax measure in place. I will say this, when Trinidad came out with this sales tax increase in 2004, we were definitely, at that time, seemed to be pioneers of this tax. And since then, I believe that many of the other cities in Humboldt County have adopted their own measures. So we're not alone anymore, but we were on the forefront, at least it was my understanding at that time, for our own region.
Mr. West?
As I said before, one of the things we discussed was the road tax at HCOG at the last meeting. And that was a 1/4 cent road tax. And the reason, and again, the Taxpayers Association was behind it. They thought it was an outstanding tax. They really wanted us to support it. And we didn't support it. HCOG didn't support it completely because many of the communities in our area are working on a sales tax themselves. It comes a 1/2 cent to 3/4. I think it's all 1/2 and 3/4, so similar to ours. But they are support, they need to have this tax passed because many of the cities are running into issues of trying to keep these programs going and get through these next 4 years. So I do want to say that not all of them, but most of them are looking at taxes, and they want to make sure that that is open for them to collect tax over this election. So yes, there's many doing it locally.
Other questions or comments from the general public? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. I do want to weigh in. The way I see this, I definitely think it's prudent to stay with a 0.75 and not spend the money to rewire the tax assessment. I believe that's the state that does that. We don't want to spend any money right now that we don't have to. For some reason, though, it just seems to make sense to me that every 4 years is a good enough pace to keep up with changes in our economic situation. 8 years, our economic situation could change drastically in 8 years. I think 4 is a sort of a conservative time to keep pace with the needs of the city. Indefinitely does not make sense just because our needs may change, and I just don't like leaving things up to that indefinite. I like it to be nice and clean so that people know what to expect. So I would urge us to consider a 4-year timeline at 0.75, but that's just for consideration. Mr. Grover?
Yes, after listening to the other council members, I concur that 4 years seems good. I wasn't aware of the tax lien or anything like that, so I'll learn from that, and I concur with your reasoning.
Okay. Mr. Davies?
Yeah, thank you. I would agree with 4 years. The climate we're in right now, there's been a lot of change just in general life. And I think this is something that the citizens in Trinidad have already come to be either in disagreement with or in agreement with every 4 years. So it's something they're used to, is what I'm trying to say. I think it's not a program change. And so I would be in favor of A and leaving it up to the voters at that level. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Other thoughts on this? All right, I believe we're at a point where we have an opportunity for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept option A.
How about public comment?
Oh, I thought we had.
I had public comment, and I can open it back up if you feel.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you did. I'm sorry. I'll second the motion then.
All right, we have a first and a second on option A. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you very much for that discussion. And again, Gabe and Eli, thank you for very clear presentation of how that fits into the city's operational needs, and also the council for considering, what the community is used to, what the community needs, what the community is likely to support. So I feel really good about this. And if anyone gets a chance to talk to Kent from the Taxpayers League, he's a smart individual and a very interesting person to talk to. So thank you for that discussion. Our next discussion decision item is regarding the April financial statements and preliminary fiscal year 2021 budget review. So I turn this over to Mr. Naffa.
Okay, so yeah, this is the time of the year where we look at the budget, and basically today we're going to be taking an overview of the budget, and then in our next meeting, the second meeting of the month, which will be on June the 23rd, we'll get into the nitty-gritty and more details. But generally speaking, with the COVID-19, some of the cities are facing some drastic impacts. Fortunately, overall, we're not quite in the same position as some of these other cities. The State League of California Cities estimated somewhere around a 1/3 revenue drop in sales tax for the months that are impacted by COVID-19. And the TOT tax, they talked as high as being down around 90%. Now, we know in our city, the only exceptions that we have made have been for essential workers and then also for someone from Humboldt County staying here. And the third exception now is for travelers staying one night on their way from point A to point B. So that is definitely impacting our TOT. But overall, and I'll turn this portion over to Gabe, but overall, the numbers that he has put together here, basically are showing that we are in a decent position, definitely compared to other cities. So I'll turn it over to Gabe.
Okay, so it's a little bit of challenge diving into every bit of detail for this budget, because we spent a lot more time this year so far in and around our most recent agenda items anyway, trying to wrap our heads around what to expect for this upcoming budget year. Let's see. So last year, well, we have done a lot of work already, I think, as part of the sales tax discussion too. We were tasked with trying to make some budget assumptions with regards to the revenue. And of course, you need revenue to determine, revenue is going to determine, what you can do throughout the course of the year. And Trinidad has had some unusual events in our revenue year that has, to my surprise anyway, taken what looked like a grim forecast for this year, and who knows next year, but painted a little rosier of a picture, I could say. So what I was hoping to do with this discussion, I have all the spreadsheets, I have the tools that I can show you. We've done this in the past, and I was kind of thinking that maybe we should do it to sort of educate anyone who's listening from the public. And I just kind of advanced just a moment ago through the slides, but I think the best way to kind of wrap our heads around this budget year is to start with the big picture of where we landed this year, so that we can kind of work backwards. Because working forwards makes sense when you have less variables, but when you have a ton of variables, you kind of have to start from, okay, what do we have in our checking account so far, and how can we apply that to next year? As we know, we've discussed, I think, last month about reserves. The city has made some great strides in the past couple of years in conjunction with some of the grants that we had to allocate our reserves. We have some revenues that are I guess, volatile, according to what Eli and I were discussing with some folks in state budgeting and finance, as far as sales tax and occupancy taxes. Usually cities with those tax sources, it is common to have higher reserves because they are volatile. But looking at this, I kind of tried to put a bird's eye view on where we're at today for you to try to understand, so we can kind of put this in context for the rest of our budget discussion today. But also at the second meeting in June, we'll dive into some more details. But I really was hoping you can take a look at this and then maybe provide us with some general direction as to what you think, how you think we should sort of move forward in this upcoming year, where there are quite a bit more unknowns. But anyway, so at the kind of the conclusion of last year's budget review, when we went through each Excel spreadsheet and we talked about every individual department budget, I kind of felt it would be helpful to have it all in one place. So as you can see in the on the screen, there's a list of revenues: general fund revenue projection, cemetery plot purchases, Humboldt sanitation franchise fees, transfers in from TDA funds, and then the COPS grant surplus. There's a column that says budgeted. So these are the numbers. This column is what we budgeted last year. And that was sort of the breadcrumbs that we use as staff to kind of advance this every time, to kind of, just keep a temperature check every so often as to where we were at and the projects that we were accomplishing. So under the budgeted column, there's in last year $732,450 in revenue, and that's all combined. Everything from the general fund, all the sales tax, the occupancy tax, the permits, fees, rents, franchise fees that the city receives, and then cemetery plot purchases and so on. Under expenses, general fund admin, that's city attorney, staff, really heavy in the staff department, and then some basic operating expenses for the town buildings. 368,000, public works, fire department, police, cemetery, waste management. Those were the expenses in each of those individual budgets, totaling $687,000 roughly. We were budgeting and expecting a positive balance of $445,000 roughly. So I was able to get all of our information as of today. We're less than a month away from the end of the fiscal year. There's still some revenues that are expected to come in. But as of today, if you look at the estimated actual column on the right, the city has already received approximately $630,000 of the $657,000 revenue. Cemetery plot purchases. This one just blows my mind. I'm not sure how this happened, why, but this year there was a huge surge in cemetery plot sales, and it was pre-COVID. So there are some COVID-related mindset purchases happening right now, but this was probably the biggest year I've ever seen. Franchise fees are about the same. Transfers in, this is from streets and roads money. And then of course we had a surplus with the COPS grant, leaving a total revenue this year, $724,000 roughly, estimated. And then as we advance down, our general fund admin expenses are expected to be on target. Public works is a little bit less because there's $10,000, for instance, in the public works fund that we budgeted last year's for trails, and we haven't used that money. Continuing on, fire department, we expected $22,000 in expenses, but we only are going to spend about half of that because we did receive all brand new SCBAs, which we expected to purchase out of pocket this year through the Measure Z grant. So that was a pretty exciting thing that happened. The police, we expected to spend $87,000. That expense out of the general fund supplements whatever the COPS grant that we received does not pay for. So our contract with sheriffs is about $160,000. We budget every year $100,000 for COPS grant because that's what they say, every city gets a minimum. But over the years, that money has been increasing. We haven't been budgeting for that. So we really budget conservatively. So in the end, we're only having to reach into our general fund for approximately $26,000 at the end of this year, as opposed to $87,000. So if you continue down and you look at the bottom line under the positive balance, you'll see where we're ending up this year. And if everything stays on track for the next 30 days and all the information we've been getting is correct, it looks like we're going to end up with a much higher balance than we anticipated. And I'm going to try to, I don't know if I want to leave this slide yet. I might want to see if anybody has any questions, but I want to illustrate how that happened. And it wasn't necessarily because we made a bunch more money, although we did have Verizon cell tower windfall. We had a number of other revenues that helped us get here, but we also, I think we had a bigger appetite last year for projects than we actually had the capability of doing. And we can't always predict, what will come up. And we had a lot of doozies this year. That's including COVID in March. So, or in late February, early March, that really kind of slowed us down. But I thought this was a nice way to present, at least to start off, so that we can see how prepared we are to roll into land. To land, I guess you could say this was a soft landing for a turbulent year at the end of this fiscal year. And then, this will allow us to roll that into next year very carefully, because we're expecting to have to dip into our reserves. But this will allow us to roll into next year without having to dive too deep into the reserves, if you follow. So I guess the bottom line is that we're looking at a very unique situation where all around us, there are a lot of cities who are aiming to be kind of hurting. And I'm not to say that the city is not going to be on board with that as a result of the state budget situation and everything else. But we are in a relatively unique situation right now to be able to maintain our services and our service levels to this community, at least at a status quo, as opposed to having to all of a sudden look at this as like, where are we gonna cut? And I'm not saying that that's not on the table. That's for the council to decide, you know, how deep we want to dip into our reserves. But I just want to just point out that this is a very unique, relatively healthy, you know, situation, contrary to some of the other things that we've been hearing. And this is what we've been planning for years. We've been planning to be able to weather storms. For such a small little city, one giant expense could really cause a huge problem. And relatively speaking, you know, this is not a rich situation we're talking about. This is a fiscally responsible and healthy situation. And I would say as an administrator for a lot of the city's business, knowing the demands of the city's services and what this community expects, I would say that we are in a good position, a very unique position than maybe some of our other neighboring cities. So with that said, do we want to get into some of the details of the individual budgets, which I think we'll come back to at the next meeting and hopefully in a roughly a final draft form? Or do we want to, do you have any questions or anything about our current position? Go for it.
Steve, you're
on mute.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dwight.
Okay, thank you for pointing to my picture over there. This is Miller. What I'm seeing is the page that shows the much better than expected situation reflects this budget year. Is that correct, Gabe?
Only this budget year, yes. But the budgeted column, which is this budget year, and the actual is on the right, yes.
Right, and with a summer which will likely have considerably, the new budget year starts July 1st, and July, August, September, October even, probably considerably reduced TOT.
Yes.
And so next year is not going to be anywhere near as optimistic as this. So a small $137,000 is not very much money. If we were to put it in reserves, will disappear pretty fast. I think with next year's budget is what I'm concerned about. And at first glance, if a taxpayer concerned about our sales tax increase says, "What are you guys asking for the sales tax for? You got plenty of money." I think context is the total important issue here, and we need to be very smart about noting what is our budget situation, not just next year, but the next several years coming up. And we need to make some smart summaries about what we're expecting. And my perception is it's not going to be anywhere near as healthy as this. So this is kind of a one-off that we're aware of and be happy about at this moment, but very cautious about how we go forward. That's the first comments I'll make.
Other comments from the council?
Can I let Eli, if you don't ask me a comment on that, because I was gonna, just kind of paint the picture of where we're at the end of this year. And Eli does, and has really good information on, some of those things that will go away next year.
Okay, so one of the things that will be going away this coming budget year is the cell towers on Trinidad Head. And currently we're making $78,000 per year. So that would be a $78,000 drop. That won't be happening until a little bit into the year. to somewhere about half of the year. So it may be around November or December. It depends on when the towers are done. So that will be one hit. And then, of course, the TOT that was mentioned, we are going to have much less revenue coming in. Fortunately, at least up until this fiscal year, we didn't have quite as many months impacted. So it was basically March, April, May, and then June's is going on. And then generally, we don't have much TOT when you talk about March and April and even May, So generally speaking, this fiscal year, the bulk of the TOT already had come in from last summer. And it won't be until this summer is being reflected in this next budget that we'll see an impact. And eventually, we may be losing some revenue from the harbor if that ends up going into the projected transfer of the harbor out of our sales tax. So we could be impacted there somewhere around $25,000. So that's, at least those are two to three of the major areas that will be impacting us.
Eli, do you have any guess on our TOT hit coming up for next year's budget? Are we looking at an 80% reduction? Wild guess?
Well, like I said, the state is just estimating 90% generally, at least the months that are impacted. So right now, as the new fiscal year will start beginning July 1st, it depends on when the opening will happen in the county. But even when the opening happens, a number of the reservations have been canceled. So it's going to take a little while to ramp up. So even if they open, let's say by July 1st, by the time they really ramp up, it might not be until, it'll probably take away most of our summer, meaning, July and August. So it won't be until like later on in August and into September that we'll start seeing maybe numbers getting closer to normal.
So could we guess maybe a 40 or 50% hit on our annual?
Well, I would say that's probably more likely that it would be in the range that the state was estimating. They said around 38%.
Okay, so
as far as a number that they came up with. So I'm thinking, somewhere around maybe 40%.
Okay, and we have roughly 100,000 from the TOT?
I think it's around 160 or 150. Gabe, do you know offhand?
Budget's for 140.
140?
That's what the sheet says.
Okay, so if you take the 140 and if you, if it's a 40% impact, then that's going to be somewhere around $56,000.
Okay, by my quick calculations, those three items that we're going to take hits next year totally wipe out the 137,000 surplus that is posted for this year. I just want to note that.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. Sure.
A question. I'm just kind of make some comments about when I'm looking at our April sheet. If I'm reading it right, and please correct me if I'm not reading it right because I'm not an accountant, but it already looks like our sales tax is roughly down 1/3 for this budgeted year up through April 30th. The TOT is already down 42%, it looks like, for this year. So I appreciate your conversation, Dwight, about how these losses, we're already experiencing them this year. Undoubtedly, they'll probably continue into next year. So I have some concerns about planning for next year. The less sales tax. Even though places are opening right now, we must not forget that it's entirely possible that we could slide back into a tighter shelter-in-place thing again as things progress. So we need to keep that in mind, and I think it would be irresponsible if we did not keep that in mind. Eli already mentioned this, the Harbor Trust. I don't know where that is in process, how close that is to being accepted or not accepted or anything, but that's also another hit. The cell tower's leaving, I have written down, and we can earn some extra money in the cemetery, but that sounded like a big anomaly, and that's nothing that you can count on. So in our upcoming budget, I would hope we're going to be extremely conservative in things. And some things I would like to be brought up into the next meeting are, I know health and welfare costs to the city are not staying stagnant. They never do. I would hope we could get some figures on the increase in that, and maybe some discussion on how we can mitigate some of that loss to the city in an expense. I would like to know how much salary increases there would possibly be due to longevity raises and such. So these are at least a couple things I would like figures brought back on.
And I would add to that list the fact that we have been working for an extended period of time with 2 public works. I think it's imperative that we have 2 licensed, certified water plant employees and a 3rd backup for other issues. I'm also hearing that we really need to revisit the staffing level that we have and look at possible enforcement officer positions, temp agency, dipping into temp agencies and whatnot, but budgeting for temp agency during periods when public works and or administrative tasks are particularly heavy. I think we need to plan ahead to fill those positions as needed, at least in the budget discussion, to see if that's something that we can work on. And I think what I'd really like to see in a couple of weeks is a couple of proposals on how much we're willing to dip into our reserves. It's just amazing that you look at 137,000 and feel a moment of relief, and that's immediately that money's gone when you get down to it. So as hard as it is to dip into savings, I think it would be foolish to think otherwise, that that's what we're going to do for 21-22. And how much is the council willing to dip into its reserves through maintaining city activities in one side of the equation, and depleting a pretty valuable resource, not depleting, but dipping into a pretty valuable resource on the other side. And I also want to point out how grateful I am that our interest income is in the vicinity of $10,000, $15,000 at a pop. That is amazing to see that we're making money from that money saved. And so that's just an example of where we can be smart. So for our June 23rd meeting, I'd really like to see some staffing proposals, some proposals on how much we need to dip into our reserves, and agree with everyone that the most conservative estimations on sales tax and TOT is what we need to operate on. I mean, we agree that the TOT and the sales tax is far from a sure bet at this point. So at this point, I'd like to open it up.
Can I ask just one question?
You bet. You bet.
Gabe, what are we looking at right here? I didn't see this in the packet, and so I can't see the top because it says viewing city clerk's content. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so this is just my worksheet. So I figured these are one of the many Excel spreadsheets. This one happens to be the revenue detail. This is where I come up with all my figures in that summary sheet. There's a number of pages in this, pretty much a giant Excel spreadsheet that is my budgeting tool. So
Okay.
I had it up just in case there were questions that might come up about where these revenues came from. And I just want to add the summary sheet that I sent out. And because of the complexities of trying to budget using data that's, like from the April, for instance, the April statements, that's all we had when I put this in. But since Friday, I asked our bookkeeper, I said, hey, I want we call it the general ledger. I want the ledger up to the minute, which includes everything that has come in from April to today that we've programmed into our bookkeeping. So the numbers on this sheet, basically, I highlighted them so they would kind of stand out, that this is information that I've added to kind of build on the April statements. So for instance, like sales tax, 203,000, that is as of May, late May. So that was, we still have receipts that'll be coming in June and then again in July, because we're about 2 months back. So we still have more revenue coming in. We don't know exactly what those are going to be.
So is this, will this be included in our next packet, I hope?
Absolutely. In fact, it'll be included with all these columns relatively filled out completely.
Okay.
Maybe some highlighted, just things that are discretionary, like I put in the staff report. We talked about 10,000 for trails maintenance, 10,000 for civic club room improvements, 8,000 for a salary study. I mean, all those things are included in all of these worksheets, and we can go through them. You'll have them in advance, be able to go through them and look at them, and then bring those questions to the meeting or ask me in advance. I'll try to get them earlier than even Friday, as best as I can. I'll try to get them as soon as possible.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And then can I say one more thing about the budgeting? I totally, what Mayor Ladwig just said is right on. And in fact, Eli and I were talking about having kind of a 2-part budgeting process, so that we have this year, we're going to have kind of a July through December look. And we're going to have to go cautious. I mean, we got a sales tax election, and we have the unknown that we're kind of entering into in terms of the budgeting due to the COVID era. So we're going to be budgeting with sort of phase 1 of the fiscal year and then phase 2 of the fiscal year, kind of depending. And we're going to hopefully be ready to react, which means not a lot of serious commitments. When you're in this situation, you kind of have to be as fluid as possible. And I should be able to bring some of those considerations back at the next meeting.
Thank you, Gabe.
Yeah.
Other council comments before we bring it out to the public? All right, let's bring it out to the public. Any public input, clarification type questions regarding this discussion item? All right. I believe that this is it. We're not making any kind of motion. We're collecting information. I really appreciate the summary page where you had some text, Gabe, that said, this is, excuse me, some things that we need to answer and whatnot. I think that the council has weighed in on all the different questions that we would like answered for the 23rd. Yeah, if I look down here, the highlights, the reserve funding, the deed info, all that business. That's very helpful for me.
Yeah, that's great.
To kind of just see it real simple bullet type presentation of what we're looking at. So I think at this point, we can wrap this up and look for June 23rd to dive into the details.
Yeah,
it's good to me.
Thanks for the discussion. We're moving on now to our final, excuse me, our final agenda item, discussion decision regarding purchase of an electronic variable message sign. So I would put that over to Eli to discuss this topic.
Okay, so I put this on the agenda, and included in here are two things. Number one, renting the sign in a short term, and number two, purchasing the sign in the long range. But the main question that I wanted to get some input on is, I know signage is very much of a concern for the community. So I didn't want to invest into an electronic sign unless we got, can you hear me still?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, there's the sign. So anyway, I didn't want to invest into a sign, whether we were renting it or buying it, without getting some input from the community. But the main purpose of this is, first of all, with the COVID-19, and I thought that we could have the message there, something along the lines of masks and social distancing required in public. And then it could actually then flash another message, such as no overnight occupancy of RVs or any motor vehicles. So it can switch back and forth between a couple messages. This way, it's also a sign that if we end up purchasing it, we can use it for future events, the fish festival. We can use it for special messages about, that the Van Wyck Trail is not currently open, that something about the Trinidad Head, whatever. So I just felt that a sign that couldn't be changed like this, and also because of the fact that it's electronic, I thought that it would really catch people's attention. People, when they're driving, are used to seeing electronic signs, usually on the freeway, telling them that your lane is ending, or there's an accident ahead, something like that. So they actually pay a little bit more attention than if it was a stationary, cheaper sign that they might just, after they read it once, just sort of drive by it, not pay attention to it. But I thought it was very important, since we are getting into the normal tourist season, and we're hoping we don't get many tourists this summer while the COVID-19 is in place. But a lot of them who may be coming here may not be wearing masks, because where they're coming from, masks are not required. So I thought it was important that we let people know that in our city, masks are required when you're in public, meaning if you are, number one, practice social distancing, and number two, if you're within 6 feet, if you're passing by someone, you definitely need to have a mask. So if you're going on a trail, you can have the mask around your neck, but as you're passing by someone, both people should have the mask over their face. That's something that the county health officer wants, and that's something that our community wants until we make sure that this COVID event is under control, which may not happen until early next year whenever a vaccine gets in place. So this way, it gives us a chance to give messages to people that are entering our community from other areas and let them know what is practiced here. Also, the fact that we're the first, when you're coming from Oregon, after Crescent City, we're the next city. We're the first city when you enter Humboldt County from the north. And as a result, people might make a stop here and not be aware of what the rules are in California, or especially what they are in our county. So my thought was to have a rental of the sign, possibly for a month at like $1,200. And then by then we would have the sign purchased, which is $1,500 with tax. Now, the good news to that is that Parsac, our insurance carrier, has given us a grant amount of $10,000 to spend on something that would be, originally we were talking about security for the town hall and also for the public works yard. But I talked to Parsac, and they said that we could take that $10,000 and apply it to this electronic message sign. And not only can it be used now with the COVID-19, but it can be used in the future. One of the other messages that I noted was lock your motor vehicles at night, because last summer, towards the end of summer, we had a rash of some burglaries where people were actually breaking into cars that were open at night, even if they're parked in someone's drive. So we could flash that message, as it happens during the year. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I thought if we could get, which we can get the $10,000 grant, so it would offset the cost of it of $15,000, and then we would only have to pay for $5,000. So, but I did want to get some input as to, what the sign, how it would fit in our community, if that's a good idea. So I'll open it to the council comments or questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Davies.
Yeah, so I've had a few comments about this. So we have a sign ordinance right now, and I'm pretty sure this would be completely against our sign ordinance, a flashing neon sign in our town. Most cities are trying to really get away from this type of stuff. They're extremely distracting. There are already a number of distracted drivers driving down Main Street coming into Trinidad. We're trying to reduce signage. I mean, I don't know, you haven't been around, Eli, but the Chevron sign was a huge issue. When Murphy's redid their sign, that was a big deal to get their old sign taken down and put in a aesthetic sign. I am not sure that I just will say I'm completely against buying a flashing portable sign. I just think it would. This is a seaside community of 300 people, and I know we get a lot of tourists, but this just seems pretty excessive in my view.
Other comments? Mr. Grover.
Yes, have you talked to law enforcement during, because I was thinking more of events like is it obtrusive or something, or would it be helpful to law enforcement because it's kind of like having another traffic person and without paying for it? Or what are their thoughts on these things? Because I agree with Councilman Davies too about the distraction. I have read reports about stuff like that, and it's more obtrusive in a smaller town. The smaller the city, the worse it is.
And I might just add, these things are on the highway right now. I mean, look at the size of these things. They're on next to the rest stop going up towards Patrick's Point. They're down on Clam Beach. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to get the smallest sign. This one, at least from this company, they call it medium. But the main intent was really for the safety of the community. I was really concerned because people are saying we don't want to have COVID-19 come into our town. And I was concerned that as this summer season ramps up and we get more travelers and tourists, that they may not be aware that we require masks. And I want the safety of our community. And I thought that was, the essential element. Plus the fact that we could end up using the sign, sending messages, throughout the year. We won't have to have it up all the time. We put it up maybe for a few weeks or whatever. With COVID-19, until the mask thing is done, we could take it down. Then, if there's a rash of motor vehicles, burglaries or something, we put it up for a week, then we take it down. But basically to get messages across, not only to our residents, but especially to visitors that just come into our town not realizing that we do have this mask requirement. And I thought there's some way we need to get that message across to them. And this seemed to be the best way to get it across.
Mr.
Repeat, is that for Miller?
Yes.
Okay. Tom and others, I've been around for a long time, and I am sympathetic and support the concept of the fewest possible signs. I recall debating considerably how we were going to have a little arrow at the end of Trinity Street for people turning right on Edwards to make sure that they headed the right direction instead of turning in front of the B&B and going left. Those are very important aesthetic issues, and I support them. what we face is a body of people coming into our town who often don't have our same values and are prepared to thumb their nose at the safety of the community. And I've gotten a number of probably 6 or 8 very concerned emails from residents saying, you know, we've got people staying over here and they're not practicing social distance and they're having a party. And what are we going to do about it? Well, we don't have really good law enforcement. We'd like to have a lot more. We can't afford it, and it's very difficult for us as residents to go up to a gang of people and say, "Hey guys, you know, didn't you realize that you're not supposed to do so and so in this town?" A little advance warning would enable us to target with our limited police forces individuals who are violating, because they would have been given advance notice. And because people go through town usually at around 20 to 25 miles an hour, especially the big rigs, I don't think there's a major distraction at that speed. The speeds that where we have distractions are more freeway speeds. But this would provide the information and the safety issue that I appreciate that Eli is trying to support us with, because it's a trade-off. We've got a number of folks in town that I've heard from who are very worried about the behavior. And as we've seen, you know, even in the protests out there, there's a number of people who are peaceful protesters, probably 85 to 90%. And there's a few people on the edges that just don't care. Well, we need to be in the face of the people who don't care coming into our community and let them know these are our values, and you will be ticketed, or otherwise there'll be police action if you do not adhere to them. I think we need to inform them. Now, I'm wondering whether, is this something we could maybe rent for 2 months? The expense might be slightly more, as a trial basis before we make any commitment for sale, for purchase. And we may find that, oh, this does help a lot. That maybe Eli and Dwight are thinking it might, but we might find it is just totally offensive. Okay, so let's not buy it then.
Thank you, Mr. West.
I agree that Dwight's got some good ideas. I can see that after watching what goes on at the eatery in terms of noticing people come in who are from the community with masks on and being very careful, and you can tell other people who are not wearing masks and they don't care and they're hugging each other. I mean, it is a nice idea, but the other side of it is I don't like the idea of signs, and I also don't like the idea of taking what looks like to me quite a bit of money to have a sign out there on a rental basis. Not sure that's a real good use of our money, especially at a time when we're concerned for the future of our budgeting. I know that Eli's got ideas of how to purchase this through, you know, he's got some funds for purchasing it, which I think is great. Maybe a good idea too would be to try to get more community, first look at our sign ordinance and see how that fits, and also look at how the community feels about this. So hopefully some community response right now would be nice. And also looking ahead to see if we get this out to see how the community feels about it. I don't like the idea of a sign, but I understand this could be important. I'm in the middle, sort of.
All right, Mr. Grover.
Yes, and I was going to ask if you had come up with any places to put it yet, because the way our city is set up there, I mean, I can see it being put where people would see it coming off the highway, but it wouldn't be invading the town. I think that's the main thing that people are concerned about, is having to look at it when they already live here, and seeing it day in and day out is what I get out of the letters I get.
Yeah, I was thinking that when people come on to Main Street, so I was thinking right after the stop sign, so that it would be possibly where the bulb out is by Chevron.
Okay, let's open it up to the general public, and then we'll bring it back. Ms. Thompson.
Yeah, I like the idea of something official
And I think that if it is an electronic sign, that's going to seem more official to people coming into our town, but also to remind our residents. I'm concerned about the people that aren't, just like other people have mentioned, there are people that aren't social distancing. And when they are close together, they're not wearing masks. And I've even observed some people walking, even though there's signs, people are walking into the post office without a mask, you know? So that, I feel like, you know, what the city manager said, it kind of makes it more official maybe for people. And also for people that are coming here for the first time. So it might be a good thing.
Thank you. Other comments? Mr. Klompus.
You know what? You don't realize how much you need a sign until you need one and you don't have it. The nice part about this one, I looked up the specs on it. It's battery powered. You don't have a generator running 18 hours a day to have the thing on. It has solar cells to charge the batteries. It's self-contained. It's relatively lightweight. You can use it or not use it or park it in a garage somewhere. But again, if insurance will pay for 2/3 of it, and there will be a time when you do need a sign or there's an emergency or a problem that you need to direct people and give them information, there really isn't much of an alternative. And rather than scramble to try to rent one, it would be nice if someone else would pay for 2/3 of it so that you would have it as a safety item when perhaps it's needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other folks from the community? We're down to a skeleton crew, but going once, twice three. Okay, let's bring it back to the council. I thought I saw some hands popping up, maybe Jack, I'm not sure.
How do people on the phone say that they want to talk? We used to unmute them.
Okay.
Just curious, I don't know.
I'm trying to unmute. I unmuted myself for directions. Anybody hear me?
Yeah, we hear you, Ms. Cox.
We hear you.
Thank you. I do not support this at all. I tried to visualize where you would put a sign, regardless of what size it is. We have 5 entrances coming into Trinidad. We can come down from West Haven, from the freeway, from Patrick's Point, from Frontage Road, from Scenic Drive. And then I heard you say, well, maybe we put it right by the Chevron where the bump out is, where that's where the bus parks every night. I can't see that having a sign flashing our rules of this town is going to make things different. This town does not have any enforcement for a lot of things, and having just a sign to say what we expect of our guests and visitors to our area, that sign can be put on the door of the market, the door of the post office, the door of every restaurant, the signage on the trails, what we expect. I don't support this. I don't think it fits our environment. We are not with Central Avenue. We do not have, the ambiance is not right. I get the safety part of it, but we don't even have a spot that's a safety place to put it. It certainly isn't going to deter the big vehicles coming into town, the ones that have trouble getting around the corners in town. It's not going to deter some of our residents that rev their engines and drive too fast and congregate and do what they want. It's not going to deter the residents. I totally against it. I think it's maybe it'd be practically free, but it does not fit our community. And I think you need to check the sign ordinance before any consideration is made. My 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Other folks on the phone? All right, hearing none, let's bring it back to council. And just in case there's any background noise, Gabe, do you mind muting the folks on the phone? And again, text me at 845-5942 if you want to chime in. Other thoughts from the council? Mr. West.
I got 2 questions. One is probably not that big a deal, but Eli, you had said kind of the things you want to have on this. This is pretty limited. You have only 30 characters on one of the signs. So it's not like you can put a lot on it, but the other thing is like, it's going to go in an area where people are entering Trinidad at an intersection we already have talked about being kind of difficult already. So, you know, if we add a distraction as people are coming in off the freeway, I mean, you're going to have to put somewhere all those roads connect. I'm not sure that's a great idea either. So I would like though, Eli, if you think this is big enough, even for what you had planned to tell residents or people as they came in, visitors as they came in.
Yeah, as far as the message, it definitely would want to minimize the number of words. But in addition to that, because it is an electronic sign, for instance, when you're traveling on the freeway, they'll have one message, but it'll go like from one frame to the second frame, and then it'll pause and then go back first frame, second frame, pause. So we could put, you know, we're not limited to what appears on the one face because we can have multiple faces up there.
That of course means there's more reading to do for people coming off of the highway. Okay. Just a little bit of concern about people reading signs as they come into town.
It'll get them off their phones. Let's see. Mr. Davies.
I just want to reiterate what I said before. It's just, we have sign ordinances. We've gone over and over on these things. Probably like design review if there's something to do with that. Placement is a huge issue. That corner on the bulb out, that is a very dangerous spot with the bus that parks there. There's a huge tree right there. It's a corner right there. People turning left. These things are a distraction, and there's a reason why cities have ordinances against flashing neon signs, electronic signs, anywhere. We've been trying to reduce signage in this town for years, and this just seems to be going completely in the other way. A sign is not going to change somebody's behavior that already has that behavior in mind. I mean, that it is not an effective way. We've already discussed this. People go the wrong way on Trinidad Head, even though the sign says go this other way. They laugh. They think it's funny. You know, they park right next to each other down at the beach, even though there are signs down there that say, please give space. They cram down there. That's not happening. The businesses have signs on them. Please wear masks. And just because we can get some money from an insurance company for something doesn't mean we need to spend it on something that, in my view, is completely out of character for the town of Trinidad. So those are my comments, and I would make a motion right now if anyone would like to hear the motion.
You know, real quick, Tom, I saw Jack's hand go up, and then I'll bring it right back to you.
Just to add one more thing is that I noticed that when I go by the gas station in that area, that's where people are crossing from gas station to the store. And I get one more thing to add to it is that you just have to be aware of these people going back and forth. You have the bus stop area where they can sit on the other side. You have the gas station, the store. So there's not lots of crossing, but it's just all these things we have to be very careful about as we come into town. And I've already had concerns about that whole intersection. So it seems to me we're just adding more at this point that doesn't seem all that safe. That's it.
And if I could just weigh in real quick, Tom, it'll be very short. I agree that we need to do something to inform our citizens. The more I think about it, I'm not really feeling this type of sign is going to meet the needs. I would love to see some kind of sign on City Hall. It's on existing property. It's something that we have control over. It's not terribly visible, but it is a way that we can get information out there for those who look up. But that's my 2 cents. So Tom, you were about to make a motion?
Yes, I'm going to actually put it in the chat here so we can all see it again. I think that is pretty helpful. So just give me a minute here. And if someone else wants to comment, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and comment. I put this on the agenda, and as you can tell, it just says council direction. So basically, I just wanted to make sure, because I knew that the community is sensitive to signs, so I wanted to get this input even before I rented one sign. Because initially, I was just thinking of just renting it, and then when I saw the cost, I thought, okay, let me see what input we get. Fortunately, we did get some good input from some of the residents, but as long as I get council direction, we don't really need a motion.
Well, I've got one right here. So I move to not employ the use of a digital sign nor pursue the purchase or rental of a temporary digital sign. And then the purpose of this motion would be to kind of extinguish this idea from coming up again in a couple months.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Four, and one against. All right, so we have a motion really that is what you were looking for, Eli, the direction. I think it's still worth at least recognizing the concern that you raise regarding people's actions in our city, and perhaps we could pursue this another way with a letter to businesses or something along those lines. I know we've struggled with the parking in the Trinidad Head parking lot and people thinking it's funny to go against the direction of the signs. And I think we've made a valiant effort, but there's probably more that we could explore as COVID comes and goes over the next 6 to 12 months. But I think you have some direction from the city, Eli, on the use of a digital sign, and we can continue this discussion on other ways to inform folks in the future. So thank you very much for that. That is the end of our agenda. We have, at this point, we typically discuss the agenda for the next meeting. I recommend that we leave it as a one agenda meeting because of our budget discussion, which will invariably lead us to other topics on how we want to expend our limited resources and pursue alternative revenues. Are there other agenda items that people really think we need to add on there for the Mr. Miller?
Yeah, possibly, let's consider maybe one other item. I'm pondering it at this time, and I'd like to talk to you about it over the next week or so. So if I could convince you and Jack that it ought to be on, then that would be appropriate. Otherwise, I'm fine with having it just be a one agenda meeting. At this time, I'll just leave it open at this time.
Okay. I look forward to the call. Mr. Grover?
And I wouldn't mind leaving this as a one agenda, but in the future, I really got to discuss about slowing people down where I live. I know you walk it a lot yourself. I mean, they're doing close to 40 sometimes, which is like twice the speed limit. So it's getting a little hairy there.
Yeah.
We don't have to do that this month.
I would support the discussion in the future of speed humps.
I know it's been brought up before.
Okay.
David, was also mentioned in the discussion before this agenda item came up about possibly, people having signs and holding signs. So you could stand there and hold the sign telling people to slow down. But anyway, on a more serious note, what I did want to mention is that item number 2, regarding the short-term rental committee recommendations, we had mentioned about having that moved to the next meeting.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. That was definitely part of it. So we'll have the supporting documentation to go with that for the next meeting. Tom, did you have any agenda items that you wanted to add to the June 23rd, the second meeting?
No, not at this time. Thanks.
Okie doke. So if I had a gavel, I'd wrap it. That concludes tonight's meeting, and thank you very much for everyone's participation.
All right, thanks everyone. See you later.
Until next time.
Good night, everybody.
Thank
you. Good night.